This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me, our Falcons analyst, Jarvis Davis, and Locked On Falcons host, Aaron Freeman. Tori McElhaney, our senior Falcons reporter over at AtlantaFalcons.com, will be back with us next week. The Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So part one of Act 2 for Darnell Mooney was a good look, but what does even more for part 2 look like? We'll discuss. And want more thunder or no in Flowery Branch? We'll download on that. And Kyle Shanahan did what? My God, we'll discuss that too. But first, no KC, but some KP trade rumors to talk about. All right, guys, let's get right into it. And Aaron, I'm going to start with you because I know this is your favorite topic to talk about ad nauseum. Why? Because we've been talking about it ad nauseum for months now. But what reset the conversation was what happened last week at voluntary OTAs. Kyle Pitts was absent, reportedly dealing with a foot injury. Now, this week, just today, moments ago, Raheem Morris said that Kyle Pitts will continue to be held out of OTAs as of today, but declined to discuss that reported foot injury. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. On Friday, NFL insider Jordan Schultz reported that multiple teams have inquired about trading for Pitts, and that while nothing's imminent, Falcons would prefer to keep KP. It would take at least a day 2 draft pick to even spark serious talk. So, my friend, I ask, if this latest KP injury has triggered a reset on trade talks, should the Falcons listen? Maybe make a move?
It's a tough question because I feel like saying multiple teams have checked in with the Falcons is not news. That's we've been talking about that for months on this show as well as others, in terms of like we figured teams were, this is the thing about trade talks and the whole GMs are constantly talking to one another. Yeah. And I think sometimes it gets reported as like, this is breaking news that such and such is getting a phone call about such and such a player. And it's like, it's not breaking news. It's like that happens all the time. And I think far too often the conversation is like, oh, this is news. And it's like, no, it's not, like, sorry for going on this rant, but like in the lead up to the draft, like there's always this buzz about, this team trying to move up and this team's trying to move up. And then we get to the draft night and then like, there's like one trade. And it's just like, okay, like y'all spent 3 days talking about all these different trades because their teams are constantly communicating is kind of the point I'm trying to make. So that part is not news to me, right? Where teams are calling the Falcons. They've probably been calling the Falcons for months to see like, what's going on with Kyle Pitts, And so to me, like the more interesting thing is this foot injury. And if that's the case, that's all it is. It's just a foot injury. Why Kyle Pitts is not going to be at OTAs, that makes total sense. Like, if the goal is to have Kyle Pitts play for you this year, you want him healthy for the season. And so if he can take a couple of days off in June, that's going to potentially help him get ready for the season. So all that to say, to answer your question, does this reset the conversation about trading Kyle Pitts? No, I don't think it does. Okay. I just think right now the Falcons are just basically waiting to be blown away by an offer. It's kind of a similar conversation we're having surrounding a certain quarterback that, we love to talk about here on these football parties every other week. They're just waiting for someone to meet the price. And if someone meets that price, then, they will have a serious conversation about trading Kyle Pitts. But at this point in time, I don't think there's any reason to think that anybody's going to make a serious offer at this stage in the calendar. As we get into training camp and there's injuries, as we get closer to the trade deadline in November, that's when I think things can really ramp up for any potential trade, whether we're talking about Kyle Pitts, Kirk Cousins, Tyler Algier, any of these other players that may or may not be available for the Atlanta Falcons later this season. But I think that at this stage, nothing, there's no news. There's nothing that's really changing the math when it comes to will they or won't they.
Yeah. And so for you, Jarvis, does knowing that there is a foot injury that's holding Kyle Pitts out for these voluntary OTAs, does that make you think, okay, well, maybe that pushes the Falcons a step closer to entertaining a trade?
No, I don't think so, because here's the thing. It's the timing of this report coming out, right?
True.
Because this is everybody has their roster set right now. Everybody is kind of understanding and getting people together and trying to figure out what depth charts look like. And, there are guys that are already set in their position. Kyle Pitts is already set as the starting tight end, right? The starting tight
Presumably.
end, air quotes, right? Because we saw what happened towards the end of the year when Charlie Warner just started becoming a blocking maniac, and this running game was humming, and this offense was getting going, and they was putting points on the board until Kirko, left us. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just left us. That's how we're going to describe that going forward. He left us. So, I don't understand why now these conversations would continue to pop up outside of Jordan Schultz getting a little nugget, saying, hey, can you give me something? Can you give me a little bit of something? It's a dead period. I want my name out there. Let me give me something I can tweet. Oh yeah, we've had conversations with people. People have reached out to us. Like, that's just how this stuff works, right? When it comes
It's
to
true.
So for me, I think the timing is awful. Because if they trade Kyle Pitts, what are they going to replace him with? Who are they going to replace him with? So you want Charlie Warner to get those check downs and expect him to get those first downs, what that Kyle Pitts is getting. Maybe by the look at Aaron's face, he probably say, "Hey, man, he probably can do that." You know what I'm saying? But I'm at a point now with Kyle. Whatever he gives you right now is a bonus in this offense, because I feel like Darnell Mooney, and we're going to talk about him a little bit more in the next segment, but those guys are the guys that I'm really counting on. Drake London being wide receiver 1. So yeah, I think the timing of this is awful. And maybe if they would have came out around a draft, so you can potentially get a replacement, sure, okay, it makes sense. But yeah, the Falcons asking for a day 2 pick, nah, this is no news at all whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think that kind of jumped out at me, the day 2 part, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, day 2, like, who is, and especially when you look down the list of the teams that were reportedly in those conversations, kind of inquiring about getting Kyle Pitts, and I'm thinking, okay, the Chiefs are pretty good where they are, right? As far as tight end, I'm just going to go out and not just tight end as far as Travis Kelce, but even that tight end room, I think, is good to go. I think the New York Jets are probably set too with their tight end room, and the Steelers, if they're gonna go out, they're probably gonna go out for like a Jonnu Smith, assuming that he does not get the money that he wants ratcheted up from Miami, because we all know Arthur Smith would love to probably have him again. If he had to pick, let's just be honest, if he had to choose between Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith is the most recent Pro Bowler. So he's the one whose trajectory continues to go up. So I think that's where you go if you're going to be the Miami Dolphins and try to scoop up somebody. Now, just wanted to throw this out there because this just came in a few moments ago from a few things that came off the podium as well from Raheem Morris, but also from Michael Penix Jr. Penix said that he's been throwing with Pitts, as we knew, in the offseason. He looks great. Raheem Morris said that, and as we mentioned, yes, he declined to speak specifically about that reported foot injury, but he said the team is being, quote, extra cautious in the situation. And then you think about all of the things that you guys just said, like it's doubtful that at this point in the season where no tight end has had some catastrophic injury, no tight end one for a contending team has had a catastrophic injury such that they would pick up a phone and call the Falcons and make that serious offer. That would be a day 2 if you were in like a desperate situation where you just absolutely needed a tight end. So yeah, I agree with you guys. I think of the teams in the mix, maybe there's not a good fit there, not so much about him, but maybe more so about the fact that the team simply don't have a need right now. So why would they do anything to like move the change or in the front office? Why would they do any type of finagling to get him? Because they don't have the need for it. But since we're talking about Michael Penix Jr., I wanted to throw this out to you guys as well, because this is something that kind of goes with that confidence that we talk about in what Michael Penix Jr. brings to the table, the confidence that the team has in him, the confidence that he has in Kyle Pitts and others that are in that wide receiver, that catcher's room, if you will say. So one of the things that Raheem Morris has said about Michael Penix Jr. is that he's, quote, finding his voice. When you take over that quarterback spot, there's a certain humility about playing the position, and then it becomes a certain confidence. Then that confidence eventually turns into a little bit of almost an arrogance about playing the position where it becomes non-negotiable. Not there yet, but I think he, meaning Michael Penix Jr., is at the mode of where he's starting, Jarvis, to get the confidence to be able to figure out how to get that moment. So what does a confident, dare we say, arrogant MPX look like on the field for you?
And I think we kind of, touched on this last week, on the football party. But to kind of bring the conversation forward, I think the next step for him, it has to be comfortable with everyone in the huddle, right? Like when you're talking about being able to communicate, nonverbal and verbal communication, on the field, and Drake and working with Drake, and I think that relationship is going to be very important this year to the success when it comes to how this offense is successful this year. Can they get to that 27 to 28 point, per game? I bumped it up a little bit, as we get closer. I might bump it a little bit more, or might bring it down, depending on what I see once training camp gets started. But I think, establishing those relationships off the field with guys like Drake, with guys like Darnell, and because we saw some moments with Darnell Mooney, right? It just seemed like something was off with him and Kirk. Not necessarily saying they don't like each other, but not from that standpoint. But it just seemed like the communication or the connection wasn't quite there to start the season. And then you start to see him get a little bit rolling a little bit with the deep, taking those deep shots down the field. And I think that's one of those things where you look at that quarterback being able to establish those relationships with your wide receiver group, and also establishing a relationship with Kyle too, because you don't want him to feel left out, and you don't let him feel left out by getting him the rock, when you can. So I think all those things are very important to him becoming that cocky, arrogant dude, that the offense needs him to be, and Zach needs to see that too. And from a play call standpoint, and be able to trust him as well. So I think those are a couple of things that I feel will get him to that next step and taking this offense where it needs to be.
Yeah, and Free, I love that Jarvis kind of put in that caveat of silent cocky, because I don't think we expect MPX to be that guy that kind of walks around with it like loud, but a silent cockiness, arrogance. What does that look like for you this upcoming season?
Well, yeah, you just look at who's won the division the last couple of years with a little bit more of that more brash arrogance that we're talking about. But like to Baker Mayfield's credit, and obviously Tom Brady's credit, the last 2 years the Bucs have been, I think, combined record is like 10-2 after Thanksgiving, and it's just like you can say what you want if you're finishing the season like that every single year, where you're winning 5 out of your last 6 games every single year, and that's pushing you over the hump to be a playoff team every single year. You can talk all day long, and no one's going to be able to say anything to you. And I think when you think about that sort of thing with Michael Penix, we talked about this on the last football party where we talked a little bit about him being patient early on in the season. And if you can have that sort of patience and not trying to push it full throttle early on and just sort of let things come to you and working that development, what Jarvis is talking about, getting on the same page with all your weapons and feeling like this offense by year's end is that sort of pick your poison type of offense where it's like, okay, well, if you focus on Bijan Robinson, then the passing game is going to kill you. You focus on Drake London, then Darnell Mooney is going to kill you. You focus on Darnell Mooney, then here comes Kyle Pitts. Oh, and then there's Ray McLeod making a play. And then there's Charlie Warner getting those checkdowns that Jarvis is talking about, in the red zone or whatever. And so like when you get to that stage,
love a check down in the red zone.
Better, baby.
But when you get to that stage, when your offense is firing on all cylinders, and again, Michael Penix is not going to be that sort of brash, confident guy, but he'll wake up feeling dangerous a couple of times without saying it. That's kind of what we're talking about. And then down the stretch, when the Falcons are playing these games that are going to be potentially the deciding factor in a playoff race in the division with the Bucs, that they can be the team that finishes, 5-1 at the end of the season, and this offense is firing on all cylinders. And to me, that's what the sort of arrogant Michael Penix is going to be. It's not going to be the words that he speaks in the media. It's going to be the words that he speaks on the field, football field.
Free, I kind of like that. Woke up feeling dangerous. Okay, I get to use that one.
Amped up, man. Go to the gym or something. Shit,
Yeah,
got me ready.
like, okay, Free. I don't know what it feels like to wake up feeling dangerous, but I'm gonna have to like invoke that in my life because I feel like that might be like that silent cocky that nobody has to hear. All you have to do is see it. But I like that, and I like the fact that, like you guys pointed out, oftentimes a lot of that it kind of comes as you develop that relationship, or you develop those relationships with your pass catchers, whether that is your wide receiver core, your tight ends, your running backs. Ultimately speaking, as you gain confidence and as you gain that connectivity with them, it starts to kind of build up as that confidence. And then when you start delivering in games, be arrogant with it. If you start winning 2, 3, 4 in a row, or if you upset teams that you're not supposed to beat, the Buffalo Bills, then that's when you can start walking around with a little bit of that cockiness and a little bit of that edge. And you can say, hey, this is my true reintroduction to this Falcons fan base as QB1. And speaking of reintroducing yourself, there's a wide receiver that reintroduced himself last year. That was kind of his act 2, if you will, part 1 of it. But what about part 2 for this wide receiver? What kind of good look is that going to be for the Falcons? We'll talk about it when we take it under further review. This episode of our Atlanta Falcons, or football party rather, is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions when you do, and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Post that job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. So Darnell Mooney had 64 catches for 992 yards, 6 touchdowns in his first season with the Falcons. And wide receivers coach Ike Hilliard said last week, as OTAs continued, that Mooney, quote, reintroduced himself to the league a little bit last year and said that the Falcons are looking for him to do even more this time around. Now, Hilliard also said, quote, we look at Mooney as obviously a yards per catch guy, a vertical threat, a veteran presence that can help, I think, with each guy in their role. That, according to AtlantaFalcons.com. So, Jarvis, for you, what does even more this time around look like for Darnell Mooney?
Play action. I'm going to steal this from Aaron. Man, my goodness. The fact that I love the way he laid it out in the first segment, talking about focusing in on Bijan Robinson, because they know second down probably is going to be a handoff, right? And there's nothing you can do about it. If this offensive line takes this next step, if Ryan Newsel is that guy to kind of step in and solidify that spot and make people forget about Drew Dahlman, and if those things are able to happen, you're talking about bringing safeties in the box, and then you're talking about one-on-one coverage with Darnell downfield. And hey, man, last time I checked, the man can burn. He can get there. And he can get there really quickly. So I think Michael Penix, that connection with Darnell, like talk about building those relationships, and you understand why Darnell reintroduced himself, right? Let's go back a couple weeks when he said, "Hey, man, I ain't here to get 1,000 yards receiving, man. I'm here to win, dog." like, do you understand how much he lost in Chicago? This man has been losing for quite some time. And being an average team, that's not acceptable. He's not built like that. He wants to be a winner. And I think that he understands what it takes to get there, right? Like, because as soon as he found out that Michael Penix was going to be that guy, this man he called his old college quarterback, who was a lefty, and was like, "Hey, man, get some throws in. I need this. I need that. I need you to come up here," whatever. So when you think about someone who takes their job that seriously, yeah, like barring any injury, you expect him to take that next step. And that's why I'm not surprised at all that you could call that out and say, hey, man, let it be known that, hey, man, this is going to be our yards per guy. This is going to be our deep ball shot guy. And teams better watch out if they're able to get this run game going.
Yeah, and I like it too, Free. It's like Darnell Mooney kind of called it out himself. Ike Hilliard kind of called it out as well. So, yeah, I think that he's the guy where, when you see a deep ball coming, it's Darnell Mooney. But I think, too, he showed. And it's interesting because with the Falcons, 6 touchdowns actually is a lot. And the reason I say that is because we know the touchdowns and maybe delivering in the red zone is always come at a premium for this team in the not so good way when I say premium. But when you're looking at a guy that was closing in on 1,000 yards down, we all have that guy who puts Michael Penix Jr. has a guy. Let me take a step back to say, hey, he can put him in position to catch a ball and get, whether that's yards after the catch, I like that part, whether that's that deep ball threat, whatever the case may be, he's got himself another weapon. And I think, too, it'll make defensive coordinators have to actually design. You can't just assume that it's going to be Drake London all the time. There's another guy that's a serious weapon over there, and that's in Darnell Mooney.
Yeah. I think, I was talking about on today's Locked On Falcons that there's a big 3 in this offense. It's Bijan, it's Drake London, and it's Darnell Mooney. And we saw that with Darnell Mooney last year, with him being, a front runner for most of the season as the most explosive wide receiver in the NFL. I certainly didn't have that on my bingo card, that we were saying Darnell Mooney is going to be up there with Justin Jefferson as like the most dynamic, explosive, most fearsome wide receiver in the NFL. And so with that in mind, like immediately you're like, well, I don't know if Darnell Mooney can do more than that at this stage, given his season, even if it wasn't his most productive, pure, from catches and yard standpoint, pound for pound, just like he was the most effective he's ever been in his NFL career. But then when you bring up things like what Jarvis is talking about, where when you get some play action, you get his speed, one thing that wasn't necessarily there, you weren't getting a ton of plays where he was getting big yards after catch and whatnot. And so if you can get some play action where you can get that speed going over the middle of the field, and we saw him a number of times when he got those opportunities last year, burn guys. And so, can he turn those 20-yard gains into 60-yard gains because of that speed that he has after the catch? And in addition to now having Michael Penix, who we know is going to enjoy pushing the ball down the field a lot more than Kirk Cousins, right? Like Kirk Cousins was very efficient in that connection with Darnell Mooney down the field last year, but Kirk Cousins is not a guy that's going to throw the ball. He's not going to be ripping it down the field a ton. He's just very efficient when he does. And Michael Penix is going to be like, no, I'm going deep, baby. And then you throw that on top of the efficiency, then you see, like there is room for growth. There's even more big plays and explosive plays for Darnell Mooney to be had, just because Michael Penix is able to do that. Then you couple that with the yards after catch, and then if everybody else is firing on all cylinders, as you said, T, and teams are focusing on Bijan or Drake or Kyle Pitts or whoever in the offense, and then you still got to worry about Darnell Mooney. So I think they're at first glance I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're going to get more out of Darnell Mooney than what you got out last year. But now the more you think about it, it's like, yeah, there is still room for growth, even if it isn't necessarily turning a 1,000-yard season that should have been had he been healthy into like a 1,500-yard season. But, if you can get 1,000 yards to 1,200 yards or whatever, that's a significant difference. And particularly, as you say, like whether it's, he's going to be your main red zone threat, which I think presumably Bijan and Drake London are getting the bulk of the opportunities in the red zone. But again, you can be that more explosive guy between the 20s, where it's like, again, if you're turning those 20-yard gains into 60-yard gains and you're running it into the end zone after the catch, you can still have that spike and see maybe double-digit touchdowns for someone like Darnell Mooney, even if he isn't necessarily going to get a ton more opportunities in the red zone.
Right. And you see, Aaron, what the season looks like for him at the end. You see him with the high reception yards for Michael Penix Jr.'s debut as QB1 last season. So that's encouraging in terms of what you said about their ability to connect with him being a deep ball threat. Also, you look at the fact that, yeah, there were 16 games that Darnell Mooney played last year and still was able to get darn near 1,000 yards out of that. So, yeah, if he plays a full season and then you look at the swoon that happened for the Falcons midway through the season, he was impacted by that. I mean, there was one game where the high was, of course, Drake London, but it was 61 yards. So that's where you really started to see, like, they couldn't figure out how to utilize this guy because the guy under center, couldn't get the ball deep enough for Darnell Mooney to really be effective. So, yeah, I think there's every opportunity for us to see something that looks like, and I like what you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything astronomical like 1,700 yards or even 1,500. If you get to 12 or 1,300 as Darnell Mooney and you can get to double-digit touchdowns, then you know that this offense is actually humming and doing what it's supposed to do. One more thing real quick, guys, as Coach kind of talked about his wide receiver one. I guess they're interchangeable. Maybe they're 1A and 1B, but he spoke on Drake London as well and talked about the fact that Drake London comes across as this really nice, calm demeanor human, and he's the complete opposite when it comes to football. Absolutely. You love that about him. So I wanted to challenge you guys to say, take a quick step back to last season and think about, because I feel like that means, okay, he's got that dog in him. He's kind of like that alpha male. Maybe one moment last season that was an alpha male moment for Drake London that you liked and you want to see alpha male, you want to see that show up at least. All right, I'm going to go with it every game this season.
Ooh. See, a moment last season doesn't immediately come to mind. I'm thinking of like going back to 23.
Okay,
when he was going up against Jair Alexander, and I think he had like a big catch where his helmet got, I can't remember if that was the Packers game, but he made a big catch on like a third or fourth down, and he had his helmet ripped off, and he got up, screaming or whatever. I think that was the Packers game, but I feel like that was like a big dog moment for Drake London going up against Jair Alexander in that game.
I like it because when you're talking about that, him showing that against Jair Alexander, that's kind of like when you stand over a guy after you've done something really, really bad to him, posterize him if we're talking about basketball. But really, I like that one. That's a great call because I think that's when I started to say, oh, okay, I see we got a little edge to us. Light skin, go on.
Yeah.
But Jarvis.
Nah, for me, it's
only
just
we can say that and know what that is about.
Right. Yeah. The subtle actions. But people, if you know, you know. That's one of those, if you know one situation. But I just think it's just the subtle actions, like the celebration when he kind of sprayed the sky and everything, got fined for it. I'm like, I'm cool with that. I don't mind that because here's the thing. I miss the diva wide receiver days. I do.
Yes.
Chad Johnson, the Terrell Owens, all that stuff. I miss that type of stuff because we come to expect in that era specifically wide receivers to act like that. And, and it was kind of cool, you know what I'm saying? Because, Darrell Reeves came along. He had to do listed in his locker. Then, everybody in that moment that was on that list had to respond. Like, hey, hold on, brother. I had a couple targets that game. You know what I'm saying? I had a couple catches, but don't do me like that now. So I just think it's just a matter of, those little moments like that lets you know that he's getting that confidence. He's feeling himself. And like I said, I don't have a problem with that. Like, continue to feel yourself because, hey, man, you about to get this rock. We ain't got to, barring any injuries, you know what I'm saying? Like, Michael Penix is going to get you the ball. He's going to find you. He's going to find 5. That 9-to-5 connection is going to be real this year. And I think hopefully it's longer, So for me, I feel like it's just the little subtle actions that lets you know that he's letting you know that he hasn't arrived just yet. But letting you know that, hey, I'm capable of being that guy, regardless of what people said when this team drafted me.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a page from Aaron's book in looking a little bit further back. But yeah, when you're out here with 172 yards, I mean, that's pretty darn special. Like if you're able to do, and really it's anything that you are able to do that is over 100 yards, especially against any of the top DBs in the NFL. I think those are the moments. And one of the moments that's coming to mind as well. And I'm seeing it and I apologize. I can't remember what game it was, but it was just kind of him, like, basically taking off his helmet, but it was in a good way. Like, yeah, I did that. Like, come for me if you want to. Like, I like all of that. And when I heard that comment from Raheem Morris, my first mind went to, that's like both of you guys have said, we've seen it at moments in the past. And granted, maybe we didn't see it anymore. Jarvis just called it out. Let's just call it what it is, because there wasn't enough opportunity given to him because of who he was working with under center. So yeah, we probably could have seen way more edge out of Drake London than we have, because he would have had an opportunity to show you what he was worth. And then if I'm in the end zone at the end of a drive, then yeah, I'm able to show you all the edge, all the alpha male, all of the cockiness that Raheem Morris even alluded to with Michael Penix Jr. I think we're going to see a lot more of that this year. I certainly hope that we're going to see a lot more of that arrogance, that alpha male, that edge that Drake London has, because in my opinion, if we see more of that, then I think that that gives us a good indication that the Falcons are indeed winning. Now, speaking of that, there's one guy that typically, if we see the chains move or the Falcons actually strike pay dirt in the end zone, it's probably because he did something to get him there. But is that enough to say you want more of him in Flowery Branch? More thunder, we'll discuss when we run it back. So, Aaron, this one actually came from our girl, Tori. Of course, she is the senior editor over at AtlantaFalcons.com. They do a mailbox weekly. And one of the questions that came from a fan actually in the UK was about Tyler Allgeier. He was expressing some concern about whether or not Tyler Allgeier should really be offered as he said, collateral for draft picks. Now, Tori's take on it was, hey, she doesn't see why the Falcons can't continue to function with both Bijan Robinson and Tyler, but on the same token, and she definitely believes Allgeier deserves a shot as an RB1, but hey, wouldn't want to necessarily lose him just for some draft picks. So I was just thinking about that because, of course, like you guys said, there are always those rumblings, always those conversations or that commentary in the back, even at this time of the year, about who the team could move on from. That said, Tyler Allgeier, do you keep him, or is there a scenario where you feel like there will be enough of a draft pick haul to actually part ways with, I believe, Thunder from Thunder and Lightning?
Yeah, I mean, again, I remember having this conversation in late January on Locked On Falcons, right? With the conversation around, you could trade Tyler Allgeier, given that the Falcons are down some draft picks. Like, you want to recoup some of that value with some of these trades, whether it's Kyle Pitts and Kirk Cousins and Tyler Allgeier. And I remember the conversation was basically like, Tyler Allgeier has a certain value to the Atlanta Falcons that I think Tori was alluding to in her article, and just giving him away just to get a draft pick back is not worth it. And I remember breaking it down where it's like, because of the perception that running backs are considered to be a dime a dozen, trade value for running backs isn't very high. It's like, outside of like Christian McCaffrey, you're not going to really find anybody trading day one, day two, and even like fourth round picks for running backs. I think I did the research, and I want to say like there's been one running back outside of Christian McCaffrey in the last 5 years that was traded for more than a fifth round pick. And basically, if you look at that and you're saying like, in all likelihood, all we're going to get is a fifth or sixth round pick for Tyler Allgeier, then it's not worth it for the Falcons to trade him, right? He's going to provide you way more value than what a fifth or sixth round pick, whether that was in this past year's draft class or next year's draft. Like, that's a special teams player more likely than anything. And it's I watch Tyler Allgeier play every single Sunday, and this man is a beast. And, unless you're blocking punts every single week and you're going, 30 for 30 on your field goal kicks, like, you're not going to outweigh that value on special teams than what he's going to bring to you, even for 5 carries a game that he's going to give you for those 5 carries. And obviously, as you're talking about, T, there's room for him to give you a lot more than just 5 carries a game. So for me, like, sure, if someone wants, as I said earlier, if someone wants to call you up and say, hey, what's the price tag for Tyler Allgeier? I'm like, okay, the bidding starts at least as a fourth round pick. Like, at the beginning, like, I'm not really going to seriously consider anything less than a fourth round pick. And if you're not willing to make that sort of serious offer just as the start of the conversation, then it's just like, okay, we can chat. We can talk about the kids or whatnot, what's going on in your life, what's your workout plan going on of that. But like, we're not really having a serious conversation about trading Tyler Allgeier at that point, if I'm the GM of the Atlanta Falcons and Terry Fontenot's shoes. So that's kind of how I sort of see it, similar to Tori, where I feel like, yes, there is a concern whether or not you're going to be able to re-sign Tyler Allgeier because, he may hit the open market and some of these, he's not going to get $15 million a year, but could he get $8 or $9 million a year next offseason, like some of these other running backs, like a David Montgomery got from Detroit a couple of years ago to play sort of that similar role in that type of offense? Yeah, I can see that happening. And do the Falcons want to give up that type of money to an RB2, knowing that down the road they're potentially going to have to pay Bijan like 2, maybe even 3 times as much money as that? Like, that's a legit question, but that's a question we will have to cross that bridge when we get to it next March in free agency. But in the meantime, I'm like, I definitely want Tyler Algier on my football team, because what happens if Bijan Robinson tweaks an ankle and misses 2 or 3 games? No offense to Jace McClellan, but like, unless Jace McClellan's coming out here and tearing it up in the preseason, it looks like the best running, because we know Bijan Tyler Algier not going to play in the preseason. But if Jace McClellan getting them 30 carries in the preseason and getting 150 yards in a preseason game, short of that, like, I'm not sitting here feeling comfortable about Jace McClellan's ability to step into the shoes of Bijan Robinson. I do feel very comfortable about Tyler Algier's ability to do that if we need him to do that. So, like, that's why, to me, his value far outweighs any sort of late round draft pick that you're more likely to get in a trade.
Yeah, I think that's a good call too, because like you said, we're not putting out any negative energy into the atmosphere, but on the same token, things happen, and you want to believe that you at least have a guy in Tyler Algier who can step in with no problem. And low key, he's also improved as a pass catcher. I mean, he's improved his receptions each year. He's improved in terms of not so much yardage last year, but we all know kind of why that was. But anyway, just in terms of him improving as far as his skill set, Jarvis, to be a pass catcher out of the backfield, I think that he has shown himself to be solid that as well. And that would be important, because while you wouldn't get the same thing out of him as you would Bijan Robinson, if Bijan went down, at least you knew that if you had to do a check down, he'd be available for Michael Penix Jr. to be confident that he could actually catch the ball and actually move the chains.
He's a yak guy. I mean, when you make first contact, you better bring your work pay, your lunch, whatever
knows about that, because he got trucked a couple of times in that Raiders game.
Oh, no doubt. Yes, absolutely. So those are some of the things that you don't want to even have conversation about trading away, because I feel like this is more fan base oriented. When it comes to trading Tyler Algier, I just don't. Like, this is what you have. I think Falcons fans, and I can understand why, they're not used to having depth. Like, you don't trade depth in the NFL. Just like Free mentioned, that man can I'm gonna say he could tweak his ankle and be out for a couple weeks. And you want an unproven running back that you drafted in the late round to come in there and do it? Yeah, it had happened before. Shoot, Tyler Algier came in as a 5th round pick in 2022 and said, "Hey man, he rushed for 1,000 yards, broke the rookie rushing record, had averaged 4.9 yards a carry, which is 5 yards a pop, which is really freaking good." So I think that people need to understand, like, he has more value, like you guys mentioned. He has more value with this team than you do trading him away, hands down. Period. Full stop. So I think, even us having this conversation is kind of weird to me, because, like, what he brings to the table, I love watching this man run the football. Like, and I was, pounding the table because, when they drive to Bijan, I'm like, hold up, bro. Hold up. I'm not saying he on the same level as Bijan, but golly, man.
But because of what you saw, in that 1,000-yard season.
Yeah, it's just from a stylistic standpoint. You just say, okay, man, I'm talking about mashing in your face. Like, I'm going to get these yak yards. Like, you're not about to bring me down at first contact. All that stuff you see when Tyler Algier comes in. Even as a rookie, you can see how serious he took pass protection, pass pro. Rookie running backs aren't good at that. And that man was pretty doggone solid. I remember asking Arthur Smith about that, and he kind of looked at me kind of funny. I was like, yeah, man, I saw it. Yeah, the man could do it. So, and he knows that. And when you have those qualities in a running back in their first year, that's when you have something. And I think that, this doesn't need to be a guy that we're talking about as far as, let's see if we can get some draft conversation. Because what are they? It's just draft picks. Like
Blank the picks.
they're picks. Blank them picks, man. Like you got a full human body that can be productive for you if you turn around and hand the ball off to them. So
Yeah.
no, man, let's stop talking about these picks, man. Forget them picks.
Right. And I think too, if we're legit serious about what the first 4 to 6 games will look like for the Falcons, with Michael Penix Jr. officially becoming QB1, you come out of the gates hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then you've got the Vikings. Then you've got the Commanders. Then you've got the Bills. And San Francisco, I think, is going to be sneaky in terms of how good they probably are relative to where people thought they were going to be, sort of in more of a rebuild. They might be closer to a reset, if that. And I think to have a 1-2 punch in the run game will be also so important to MPX to take that pressure off of him for feeling like he has to do everything in the pass game. So yeah, I think to get a good start out of the gates, you really do need not just a 1-2 punch as far as the pass attack in the run game, but within the run game, a 1-2 punch might be good as well. One more thing, guys, safety Jordan Fuller joins the Falcons, got a positive mindset about this opportunity for him to have a fresh start, although he did talk about the fact that there obviously is a lot of familiarity for him because of him being coached before by Raheem Morris and just having so much other familiarity with the team. But that said, it made me think about this. We've heard this refrain fairly recently. There's a bunch of familiarity for me. I think it's a good fresh start for me, blah, blah, blah. That didn't quite work out last year when it came to Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons. So what do you guys think about this opportunity for a fresh start? I mean, Aaron, are you a little bit concerned? Are you really almost like wait and see whether or not this will be a good look for Jordan Fuller because of how much the Falcons didn't get out of Justin Simmons last year?
Well, for me, I don't have those expectations on Jordan Fuller. Like, I think he actually benefits because when the Falcons went out and made the move for Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons, we all were sitting here like, this is the move. These are the moves that are going to put this team over
the top.
It's going to work out. It's all smooth sailing from here. And then we obviously didn't get that. No one's saying that about Jordan Fuller. There's no knock on Jordan Fuller, but no one's sitting here going like, this is the move that's going to push this defense up. Like, we're sitting here talking about Billy Bowman and Xavier Watts and all these other safeties. And then Jordan Fuller's like, I'm here too, guys. Like, what's good? Like, I've spent 5 years in the NFL. I've been pretty productive. Like, I can still play good football. So like that, I think that gives Jordan Fuller the benefit. Like, no one's going into this year with any sort of high expectations for him. So whatever reset he gets, whether it's, if he just is just a guy, then like no one's going to be like, oh man, I can't believe the Falcons wasted all that money on Jordan Fuller, like because they don't have those expectations like they had with Justin Simmons. Mm-hmm. And then if he actually goes out and balls out, everybody's like, oh, what the Jordan Fuller? Where did this guy come from? I forgot that the Falcons even signed Jordan Fuller. This also. So I really think not having those expectations really benefits him in a major way because like no one's really talking about him, and so he can just go out there and play football, and whatever you get from him, good, bad, all the things in between, like people are gonna be like, all right, that's fine, that works for me. So I think it actually benefits him.
So Jarvis, does this signing of Jordan Fuller and him saying this is kind of like a fresh start for him, does this give you a little bit of pause, a little bit of unsettling because you're like, oh gosh, don't let it be a Justin Simmons all over again? Or are you thinking like Free, where it's like, hey, I don't really have that many expectations or that high of an expectation for him because after the high letdown from Simmons, all you can do is go up?
Yeah, I mean, I have no expectations. I'm with Free on this one. When they signed him, I was like, okay, that's a vet, a guy who can start for you, right? And once they drafted Xavier Watts and brought in Billy Bowman, I was like, okay, this kind of be a bridge to let the rookies get acclimated, and then their talent start to shine once they, understand what they're trying to do on defense and all that stuff in the scheme and everything what Jeff Ulbrich is trying to convey to those guys. Then they can step in and be a starter, so to speak. So good, but I do feel it's a comfort signing for me. It is, what if Xavier Watts is a bum? That could happen. It's possible.
Or it has a slow start.
Or he has a super slow start, can't pick up on it. He comes in, and they're not quite picking up on the defense and everything like that. It's just too much for him because that can happen when you're talking about a rookie DB, right? So if Jordan Fuller is the starter to start the season, I would not be surprised at all. And, I want him to play like a vet. That's it. Like, there's no, oh, man, this dude need to have 7 picks and all this stuff and needs to make the Pro Bowl. Now, all those things are out the window. And I think that, the Justin Simmons signing, yeah, it stung. That stung a little bit because, like I said, the excitement was there. But when they bring in a guy like Jordan Fuller, I'm just sitting here like, okay, it gives me a little confidence. It puts me at ease a little bit that you're not expecting a rookie safety to come in and be that dude right off the bat. I'm cool.
Yeah. And you look back, obviously kind of taking out his 2024 season, but if you kind of look back at his 4 seasons with the Rams, other than the year that he only played 3 games, it was solid. And if you think about that being the time that he was with Raheem Morris, and you kind of speak to that, you're at least encouraged that it could happen again. And I think, like you all said, and let's just be honest, could it really be any worse than what the Falcons got out of Justin Simmons last year? I mean, I think there's only up. That's the only way that this team can go. And hey, we've got OTAs and more practices to be able to see exactly what Jordan Fuller brings to the table. And speaking of practice, yes, we're going to talk about practice because we got some joint ones. We'll talk about that on the other side. So, Aaron, the NFL officially announced the preseason schedule Friday. Falcons will host the Lions on August 8th, Titans on the 15th, wrap at the Cowboys on the 22nd. So while we know Raheem Morris won't likely let starters see a lot of playing time, is there any game of those 3, let's start there, where you want or maybe hope to see a little more of the starters? And of course, we'll talk about those joint practices in a second. But first things first, we know the 3 preseason games. Any one of them, you hope maybe you can get more of a glimpse of the starters.
Well, T, I was going to say the Titans game, and then I saw that they're having joint practice. I'm like, well, they're not playing that game at all. They're just going to be like, oh, we got good work in those 2 days of practice.
Exactly.
And then
that's your preseason game.
All right, well, there's no chance that their starters are playing that Titans game. So,
right.
And there's probably no chance that they're playing that first game. So it's just like, I guess the Cowboys game, like maybe someone gets on the field for 5 snaps in that game. That's basically the only hope I have at this stage that we see any of the starters. But yeah, originally I was going to say that second Titans game as sort of the game that it's like, okay, there's a chance. Like, we know they're not going to play the first game, and then they're probably not going to play the third game. So it's like, there's a chance they might play in the second game. And then it's like, oh, no, we're having joint practice that week. And it's like, oh, that chance goes completely out the window. So yeah, I got to make peace. I already got to make peace with no starters. It's like, I'm just like, hey, Raheem, can we get some second string guys in there? Like, because I know we're not going to see the starters. Like, I just need some second string guys. That's all I need in the preseason game. And maybe we get to see that in the Titans game.
Yeah, that's probably the hope, Jarvis, that if anything, yeah, you might have a snap count that is on your wish list for this team with one of these teams, against one of these teams. But mostly you're probably looking at just areas or positions where there's a battle. That said, any of these games where you're like, man, it'd be nice to see some starters with about 5 to 7 snaps.
I know we're going to see Brandon Doyless play. I know Brandon Doyless ain't going to get held out. That motherfucker need to play. Zach Harrison, man, go get out there. They got like 17 edge rushers. Somebody going to have to play. Come on now. We got 17 million edge rushers. So, yeah, the city of Atlanta wants to see one of those dudes put their hand in the dirt when it's 3rd and long. God willing. You know what I'm saying? Like, Cam Ward going to be out there. Like, man, put the rookie on. More than likely, Cam Ward's going to be out there.
Yeah.
Put the rookie on the ground. Come on now. Y'all know how encouraged I will be after that doggone preseason postcast. Like, I will gladly lead off with that. We will talk about it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think there are going to be some guys. I don't think they have enough. They can afford to not let certain guys play, right? Like Brandon Doyless, barely saw him at all last year. He needs to play. Zach Harrison, yeah, you got to see what you have. Can he be a guy to kind of give you some reps on the inside on certain base fronts? You know what I'm saying? And then come in and be that guy to rush on when it's pass rush situations and split force situations. So yeah, I know he's not gonna play the starters, so to speak, but Brandon Doyless ain't no starter. Zach Harrison ain't a starter. Like don't get those guys out there. Braylon Trice is very, very optimistic. With given his situation and how they're kind of working with him. But yeah, probably won't see a guy like that. Probably won't see Leonard Floyd for sure. So, but yeah, those second year guys that you're expecting to go out there and be those guys and give you good reps in a rotation up front. Yeah. Take them out there. Put them out there. Got dog it. Yeah.
So maybe, Aaron, the more of the excitement and the intrigue will come around, and evaluation, I suppose, will come around that joint practice, as the Falcons have confirmed they will host the joint practices, and as you mentioned, with the Titans during the second week of the preseason. So maybe
can I add a little quick?
Yeah, go.
Oh no, Nashville seeming a little attractive. Might get trip up there. Might just do that. Just want to put that out there. Aaron, we can meet up there. You know what I'm saying?
We can get some hot chicken, something,
You know what I'm saying? Get some hot chicken, you know what I'm saying? Go check out the practice, you know what I'm saying? Do some work, just put it out there.
They're saying that they're set in for Flowery Branch, though, on August 12th and the 13th. So I don't know.
Yeah, man,
Seems like they're going to be set for, I don't know. It seems like they'll be set Flowery Branch, but Flowery Branch does have a cheeseburger Bobby's, Aaron. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Yeah, Jarvis and I, we made that that's like our BFF type of spot. So, if you're ready to pull up, then come on through. We got a seat at the cheeseburger Bobby's table for you. I promise you that.
Yes. And the Chick-fil-A be hitting too, right up there. You know what I'm saying? Right there.
Yeah. Chick-fil-A hits different. Let's just keep it real. And not every Chick-fil-A is just like Popeyes and the Popeyes chicken sandwich. Not all Chick-fil-A's are created the same. That Flowery Branch Chick-fil-A. Yeah, Jarvis. Great call.
Yes.
That Flowery Branch Publix is not to be played with either. Yeah.
Yes.
Just saying. Something else that's not to be played with is your veterans, especially when you have a cadre of veterans like Julio Jones, Roddy White, and Harry Douglas. But Kyle Shanahan seemingly tried it on the debut of the Legacy Locker Room podcast, co-hosted by Julio, Roddy, HD. They had some shocking things to say about how Shanahan did or honestly didn't use them in the Falcons offense. And granted, a lot of you guys may have heard a snippet of what those guys had to say, especially Roddy. Like, I think that might have been the most surprising one in all of the ways that it seemed that Kyle Shanahan was just confident, or like we said a little bit earlier, borderline cocky about what he was not going to do as it related to using Roddy White in key moments. So I don't know about you, Aaron, but it was a little bit shocking for me, because I'm thinking, as great as all of those offenses were under Kyle Shanahan, it still feels like maybe he mishandled some of the veterans on this team, leaning in the direction of, well, what I think it's supposed to be is what it's supposed to be, and never the twain shall meet in terms of, but there might be an alternative way that could work too.
Yeah, me and Jarvis had a conversation about this on last week on Lockdown Falcons on the Friday episode. And I'll use the parlance that Jarvis used. Kyle Shanahan can be a little bit of a Richard when it comes to how he interacts with players. And I think that's evidence of it. Like, and I think the conclusion that
I'm going to use that too, by the way.
Yeah. I don't want to put words in Jarvis's mouth, but I think we both reached a similar conclusion where, like, Kyle Shanahan probably could have done a better job treating some of those veterans in that Falcons locker room, like a Roddy White, with respect. But at the same time, I don't think he was wrong in the sense of, at that stage in Roddy's career, he probably was not, deserving is a hard word to say, but like, of being a featured outlet in the offense. And so it's just kind of this balance of, like, he's not wrong in the sense of on the field on how he's using the players, but he's definitely wrong in the off the field in how he interacts with those players. And that was kind of the thing that stood out to me then 10 years ago when it was going on, because I remember that was a big topic of conversation, like, why is he not using Roddy? And then that Colts game happened, and like the first 3 plays, he's like, I'm okay, y'all want to see what this guy's still got left in the tank, I'm gonna call up 3 plays for Roddy White at the beginning of the game. And I think Roddy caught like one of them, and then it was like, okay, I did what I was supposed to do, point proven. Now we can move on. Are you guys happy now? And so again, that's being that Richard that Jarvis is talking about. And that sort of arrogance, it's 2 sides of the same coin. Is this like he's a hyper competent play caller? He's proven that over the 17 years he's been a play caller in the NFL.
100%.
But at the same time, it's also can rub people the wrong way in a lot of ways. And so, that's just kind of the thing that you're getting with Kyle Shanahan. You're getting both sides of it. And so it's like, as long as the team is winning and being successful, like you're not complaining about it. But when in 2015, when the team wasn't winning and wasn't as successful, it was a weekly topic of conversation, whether it was on 92.9 game or Locked On Falcons or whatever. It's like, this is not working. Get this man out of here. And then it worked. And then it was like, oh, please stay, Kyle, come back, that sort of thing. So, it's it is what it is, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think for me, though, like Aaron mentioned, this was like the level of Richardness that Kyle exemplified back then. Because Terry Robisky, I got a couple sources from back then. He came to Roddy before those 3 plays that Aaron talked about. He said, hey, man, he coming to you. He going to prove a point. So, hey, Roddy had to go do what he possibly could do in that particular situation. So I think it's just, but my big thing is that, you're looking at, Julio, Jacob Tamme. Obviously, Jacob Tamme had a lot of success in that offense, sure. But like, man, he can be a third option,
Yeah.
The man said Leonard Hankerson. Like, who
I think that was the part, Jarvis.
That's disrespectful, dog. I understand Roddy wasn't peak high level Roddy that we were used to seeing or being wide receiver 1 because it was a little weird for a little bit. I know it wasn't weird between those guys, but just from a fan standpoint and covering his teams, like, all right, y'all gave up the farm for Julio, and then y'all got wide receiver 1, Roddy. What about Roddy? So it just that took a little time to get some used to. So we understood what the pecking order was, but like you bring in Jacob Tamme, sure, all right, cool, 12 personnel, cool, get that jump going, all that stuff, right? But man, Leonard Hankerson though, like. What we talking about? Leonard Hankerson is one of the rando wide receivers that played for the Falcons. Like, that's a trivia question. Like, name the most random wide receiver that ever played for the Atlanta Falcons. Leonard Hankerson is probably going to be one of those guys. So, yeah, I think Kyle, hopefully he's grown. But, hey, the one thing about Richards, they probably stay Richards, because they had success being a Richard. So, they have no reason to change. So, but, yeah, it was just unfortunate, though, that he handled Roddy like that, obviously coming down to the end of his career, but just for him to handle him like that and be disrespectful like that, because Roddy mentioned, he said, hey, in practice, when they were going through the script, he was getting the rock. So why wasn't he getting the rock in the game? So until he said, hey, man, be real with me, Kyle finally came out and said it, all right, hey, man, it's who? It's Tamme and his doggone Leonard Hankerson and whoever or Free, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not in that. You know what I'm saying? You're not in that. You're not even a check down, option. So yeah, man, that's tough. That's tough to hear. I'm sure that was tough to hear from Roddy. Like you could kind of see it when he was talking about it. Like, man, that man still probably ticked off about that.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, there was one thing that you mentioned earlier that I failed to mention. So I apologize for kind of missing this, but you talked about who you wanted to see, Jarvis, and you kind of pointed out Brandon Dorlus as one of those guys that you better see get some playing time here this preseason, whether that's intense action during joint practices or really more importantly during preseason. And Raheem Morris actually did speak on him also, Rukeroro, just basically saying, I think it needs to happen in training camp for these guys. The next part of that is getting to the physicality part of our game. And I just wanted to give you and Free the opportunity to just weigh in ever so slightly because, it just kind of speaks to the thing that you said, like, hey, we may not see all the starters. We may not see even in some instances, some of the kind of, if it's a 1A, 1B situation, but in a room full of pass rushers, a room full of defenders, we might need to see Dorlus and what he can do. We might need to see Rukeroro and what he can do. And the fact that Raheem Morris spoke specifically about them saying he thinks it needs to happen in training camp, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, like that was the thing last summer where like at a certain point, Raheem stop playing everybody that was going to make, like, you knew who was going to make the team last year because it was like that guy didn't play in the preseason game, and it's like, why is that guy? That's a second string guy. Like, that's not a starter. Why is he playing? And it just became like, I remember like Taquan Graham and Kentavious Street, like they came in for like 4 snaps, 1 series, they're out the game. Let's throw in Rook and Brandon Dorless, and they'll play the rest of the game. And like, I'm fascinated to see if Raheem does the same thing with some of these young guys, because like that to me is kind of the thing when it comes to playing guys in the preseason. It's like the veterans, like they're good, they're fine. They've been in the league for 5+ years. They know how to get ready for a season. But these young guys don't. They're still learning that. And some of these like second and third year guys, like I want to see them in the preseason. I want to see them get those snaps on the field. And like Brandon Dorless, Ruka Roro, a lot of these guys that we did not really get a chance to see last year, like, is Raheem going to do the same thing and give them a short hook? Because like, well, they're going to play for us this season, and that's going to be their time to play. Or are we going to be able to get run? And then you wonder, with the injuries to DeMarco Hellams and Braylon Trice last year in preseason games, like, does that scare off Raheem from playing some of these guys that you know are going to be on the team or going to contribute this season? But is he just going to play that game of injury risk? And so that to me is going to be the big question I have going into training camp. And so, but like all of those guys, I want to see all the rookies. I want to see all these second year guys, third year guys. Like basically, if you haven't hit free agency yet, you need to be playing in preseason. That's my basically opinion at this stage. Like, and so like, are we going to see that? And I don't know the answer to that question.
And it's unfortunate because, like I said, I want to see Rook too, just as much as I want to see Brandon. Like, Rook showed he had a couple flashes last year. Like, oh, okay, man, get a little something going on, you know. But you want to see those guys. I want to see Billy Bowman. I want to see what he's talking about. I want to see those guys. I want to see Xavier Watts. Those guys need those reps. I understand, you know, with the joint practices and everything, you know, it's gonna be here in Atlanta and all that stuff at Flyway Branch or whatever. Like, yeah, those reps are gonna be valuable as all get out, and I can't wait to see it. All right, but it's something different. Something different happens in the game. It's the reason why they call them games versus practice, because there are some guys who have solid practices and they go out there and ball their behinds out in the games. And there are some guys who practice so well during the week, and then they get out there when the lights come on, it turn into a deer in headlights. So yeah, you have to see what you have. And that's my biggest thing, especially with those first and second year guys. Like, you know, David Onyemata, yeah, man. All right, bro. You can put your helmet on, but you ain't getting in. That's fine. You don't want to bust a little sweat, warm up. All right, cool. That's whatever. You know, Jesse Bates, yeah, man. Matter of fact, go get in that bubble over there until it's time to play Tampa Bay. You know what I'm saying? Like AJ Terrell, man, you go and get into that bubble with them. Y'all can, you know what I'm saying? Y'all can smoke a cigar, whatever, do what you want to do. You know, whatever your vice is, get into that, whatever. But like these first and second year guys, Billy Bowman, Xavier Watts, Ruka Roro, Brandon Dorless, Zach Harrison, I want to see all those cats, even if it's just for a couple of snaps or whatever, I mean, or the first quarter or whatever. Yeah, those guys got to get those reps in because you got to see, can they apply what they learned during the week? And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, that balance of being cautious about injuries versus getting them game ready, because they do need to be ready for week 1. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked on Falcons with Aaron and his frequent guest analyst Jarvis as your second listen, and check out some of Tori's work at AtlantaFalcons.com. We'll see you next time.